Yeah, my name is Adebola Adewumi, owner of Rush Bowls Restaurant located in Hillsborough, and also owner-operator of Gym Guys in-home personal training that covers the greater Washington County. So on behalf of the Black Advisory Council and the Washington County Chamber, welcome and thank you for joining. During this panel discussion today, it is our hope that you will hear and see the amazing opportunities and ways that the Washington County Chamber and Black Advisory Business Council have come together to celebrate Black History Month through our social media platforms and panel discussions. This discussion today is a celebration of Black history and how far we've come to be stronger by building and working together, cultivating a culture of strength, integrity, and continuity. We are delighted to have a panel of remarkable and amazing Black professionals that are paving the way to success in our communities. This discussion is going to center around finances and wealth and business. We'll have time reserved at the end for discussion. You guys can ask questions, but if you're on Zoom, we ask that you remain muted until at the end and you raise your hand to ask questions. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're going to start by having the panel introduce themselves. So we'll start with Adesina. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Adesina Cameron. I am co-owner of Ventura Home Loans, which is a local mortgage broker. And I was born in San Francisco. And my mom is white and my dad is Black. And so I grew up kind of mostly in his world. And I considered ourselves to be poor when I was growing up. And I never heard the words generational wealth or anything like that. And I lived in San Francisco, went to college in Santa Barbara, went to work at Whole Foods and spent the most of my career working at Whole Foods. And when I decided to have a baby, I was going to retire from the work world. And then a friend of mine said, well, you could do this with me, this lending thing. I had no idea what it was, but I had just bought my first home. And when I first started doing it, I immediately saw that there was a mission connected in there too. Because for me, as a person who didn't really, I kind of knew what my credit score was, but you couldn't just look it up on Credit Karma back then. So I started doing this business just kind of coincidentally, and then I really realized that there was a mission to take the information that had changed my life when I was 40 and try to get that word out there for people earlier in their lives. And I've been in Oregon for my daughter's 8, so 7 years now, and I live in Southwest Portland with my husband and my daughter.
All right, thanks. All right, let's go with you, Lance.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Lance Randall, and I was born and raised in Macon, Georgia. Graduated from Morgan State University, which is a historically Black college located in Baltimore, Maryland. I've also worked for local, state, and federal elected officials in my past career. And in 1995, I started my career in economic development. And in doing so, I went back to the University of Oklahoma and graduated #1 in the class in 2000 at the Economic Development Institute. Since that time, I've worked in economic development in Macon, Georgia, Seattle, Washington, and now I'm here in Portland. I'm not currently the economic development, I am an economic development practitioner, but I am the executive director of the Black Business Association of Oregon. And just to give you a little bit more background about my family, I like to talk about my grandfather, who was a phenomenal businessman in the 50s and 60s. He was pretty much independently wealthy then, and because he was independently wealthy, he was chosen to lead the bus boycott movement in Macon, Georgia. He was a very close friend of Dr. King, and I have pictures with him that just amazed me. But as being a independent Black businessman, he was able to lead the movement because if you were working for someone, preferably someone that was white at the time, and they found out that you were involved with the civil rights movement, they would take your job away from you. So he was a prime candidate to lead the movement, very successful businessman who went on to become the county commissioner. And he was the one that guided my path to get into economic development because he always said that economic development is community development because we have to be able to pay our bills as we move forward. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, sharing information about intergenerational wealth and economic development.
All right, thank you, Lance. Let's go with Tony.
Hi, I'm Tony Kelly. I am a real estate broker, a principal broker. This is my 20th year actually in real estate. I am the co-founder and co-owner of Keller Williams Realty Portland Premier. And my background, I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, born and raised, left there to go to college. I went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Graduated from there, went active duty Air Force, lived in North Dakota for 5 years, I was a nuclear launch officer. Air Force was great to me, paid for my engineering degree for undergrad, paid for me to go to grad school for my MBA. Then I got out of the Air Force and went into corporate America. I worked in high tech and lived in Minneapolis, St. Paul, then eventually got promoted, moved out to the Bay Area, took over a division out there, got promoted again, took another division down in San Diego. And then that's how we ended up here. As the company I was working for at that time is headquartered here. And I took over an international sales team, and director of sales operations was my last corporate job. I say I had a very early midlife crisis. And at that time, you got to understand this is prior to Zoom and the internet being where it is today. I did a lot of travel, a lot of international travel, had young kids at home, and decided I just couldn't do it anymore. So walked away from a lot of stock options and financial security and decided to go into real estate. And one of the reasons we picked real estate is because each of those moves, we always purchased homes. We always bought and sold homes. We always did really well. We had great experiences and not so great experiences with realtors. And to be frank, with my experience in marketing and running sales teams, I just figured this was an industry, especially at this time in 2003, that I could go into, hit the ground running very quickly and be successful. And I did. You know, at the end of my first year, I finished number 3 in my office. Then I was approached with the opportunity to invest in Keller Williams. At the time, nobody had ever heard of Keller Williams. And we did. We started that market center, me and my business partners, and we grew that to over 200 agents in 2 locations. I'm also, so in addition to being a co-owner of that organization, I have my individual team, TLK Group Properties, and I'm currently serving in several governance capacities. If you're in real estate, I am your president-elect for PMAR. I'll be taking over next year for our 9,000 members. I also serve at the state level on the Government Affairs Key Committee. And one of the reasons I think I'm here is because I am the president for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which is an African-American real estate affinity group that started in 1947. Back when us Black people were not allowed to be realtors. In fact, a lot of people don't know this, but we weren't allowed to be realtors until 1961. For many of you, that sounds like a long time ago, but I was born in 1967. So in the same decade that we were allowed to finally join this national organization is when, the same decade that I was born. In fact, there are several states or several state associations where African Americans were not allowed to be members of those real estate associations until the early 70s. So NAREB was founded in 1947 so that they could provide economic opportunity and housing for Black people and for not just buying, but also those who are involved in the industry, from appraisers to inspectors, property owners, property management owners, and of course the buyers and sellers. And it's still integral today. NAREB was always at the forefront for any type of fair housing legislation, dating back to 1948, 1964, 1968. All the major landmark bills or legislation that was passed regarding home opportunity and fair housing was championed by NAREB. So that's my story here. So.
All right, as you guys can see, we've got a wealth of experience, very varied. So yeah, thanks for the introduction. So we're gonna get right into it. So being that this is Black History Month, what does Black history mean to you? We're gonna start with Adesina.
Yeah, thank you. So, and gentlemen, it's nice to be up here with you. I can see we come from very different backgrounds, right? Because you guys have some history of business owning and generational wealth and high expectations for life in your background. And that's not necessarily what I had. So we approach this at very different levels, right? I'm going really one-on-one on mindset change with individuals about what they can have. And you guys are working at the top, and it takes all of those things. But what does Black history mean to me? It's interesting. I grew up on the West Coast in San Francisco, which was, even back in the 70s, pretty diverse. So I actually did not grow up in an environment where I did not necessarily see people that looked like me in different levels and succeeding and stuff. But for me, the really important thing about Black History Month, and what was so interesting to me about it as a child, was that we have these these figures that are in history, and it's changed so much now with the internet, and you can look up anything that you wanted to, but really we all knew the same things when I was a kid and in the generations before that. So having a time when we actually got to say, you know, we have scientists too, we have actors too, we have stuff too, that was always a time for me when it just felt like I could really appreciate and I could share with other people in my class and such that, you know, like the peanut, you know, we had an involvement in that. So for me, Black History Month has been really significant just because it's an opportunity to showcase people that have achieved things that are really important parts, not only of our culture, but of our culture as a whole. And I think that that's something that's interesting now because we're in a new time where people are really listening, where people are, their ears are open to understanding that it's not just, there's not just three people, right? You always heard about the same people. Sojourner Truth, George Washington Carver, you know, turns out there's more than a few Black folks who helped influence this country. So I think that's what's nice about how it's evolved.
It's not me.
All right, we're going to mix it up a little bit,
right.
mix the order a little bit. We're going to go to Tony next.
It's just an interesting question, and it's one that I probably have a different perspective on. And that is because growing up in Detroit, Michigan, which is, especially me, I'm from Detroit, I'm from actual 7 Mile. And growing up in a Black environment, especially as a child in the 70s, it wasn't necessarily about Black History Month for us. It was in school, we learned Black history. So it literally wasn't until I got out of that bubble and went off to college in Colorado that I realized, like, okay, these people don't know about all these historical figures that we grow up learning about in school. So it was kind of an aha moment for me. So when I look at it, when Black History Month was started in 1926 by Carter Woodson, it was a Negro History Week. And then it grew into a month-long celebration. And the whole purpose was to really expose the incredible achievements and contributions that Black people have had to this country, for this country. But it also highlights the struggle. It was designed to highlight the struggle that Black people were going through. And frankly, we still go through. And so when I look at Black History Month, it's interesting because, like I said, it's a different perspective. A lot of these individuals, these historical figures, I grew up knowing, but understanding that, like I said, once I got outside of my Black bubble there, most of the country doesn't know who these individuals are. And that really, if anything, re-emphasized the importance of continuing to have Black History Month. So that's how I look at it. It's probably, like I said, a little different perspective coming from Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, thanks. I like that perspective. We'll go you next, Lance.
Well, Black history to me is factual information. Factual information about the first humans on the planet. And it so happened to be us. So I like to start there and recognize us as being the original inhabitants of the earth. But it's also factual information about the experiences of Black people starting in 1619 when we arrived here. And the reason why I like to look at it as factual information, because it helps me understand the contributions that Black people have made to civilization around the world, and the contributions that we have made to this society since we were brought here. And the importance of Black history, to me, means that it acknowledges what we've done in the past. And when you look at it, we've done more than people give us credit for. But it also affirms what we're going to do in the future. We were at the beginning, we're still here, and we will continue to be here, and we will continue to be contributed. And I would even go as far as to say everything in existence today that is happening is because of Black people. And to me, that's what Black history means.
All right, thanks. All right, we're going to go on to the next question. So what is a misconception that you've had to dispel about Black businesses in general while working in your current position? I'll start with Lance.
Well, I would say the one misconception is that people like to say that Black businesses can't compete, which is not true. We can compete in any sector, we can compete in any job, and we can run any type of business. All we need is an opportunity. Because every time we get an opportunity, we always succeed. I like to say we're game changers. And I like to use the analogy of sports and how we change every game of sports, from basketball to baseball, to football, to gymnastics, to tennis, to golf. Every chance we get to play a game and we learn the rules, we master it and we achieve. And I say that's the same situation when it comes to business. As I mentioned earlier, we are the original people, which means that we've been doing commerce longer than anybody else on the place on this planet. It's just that here in this country, by design, things have been put in place to sort of diminish our ability to do what we do best. So when people come to be critical of Black businesses saying they can't do this, they don't know this, yes, we do know. We know how to do it. We have the ability. All we need is an opportunity, and get out of our way and let us do it.
Well said. All right, we're going to go to Adesina next.
So like I said, being a business owner is newer for me in the last couple of years. And I'm from the West Coast, so I haven't had the same experiences that these guys have had. But I think for me, one, I think misconception is that there was all this money out there for me to start my business. Now that doesn't mean it's not out there, but just like there was supposed to be all this money for me to get scholarships when it was time to go to college, that's a whole different job, is looking for that type of stuff. And when you are starting a business, you're already wearing all the hats in the world. So I think that's the one, is that, oh, you're a Black woman starting a business, there must be all sorts of help out there for you. There might be, but I don't have time to look for it. So that's one. And then I think just the other one is the idea that, so, you know, as a person starting a business, that somehow that's my only focus, right? That I'm somehow here to serve entirely differently. I am here to serve the Black community. I'm here to serve women. I'm here to serve single parents in a way that's culturally appropriate to them. But that doesn't mean that that's the only thing I'm here to do or that I can do. And that my influence, my experiences in the world are some about the mindset that I grew up in and the experiences that I had. And I can serve people who have had those same experiences regardless of what they look like.
Well said. All right, Tony?
I would have to agree with my two panelists, so that's it. No, I'm just kidding. But I do agree with what they're saying. I would say I would even take it up to a higher, like a 50,000-foot view, and the things that we're dealing with as minority owners or minority business people are the same things that all Black people deal with no matter what industry you're in, and that is dealing with stereotypes and having to deal and diminish and break through those perceptions that people have about us. So when we're talking about like the perceptions that people have about Black business, I think it's also the perception people have about Blacks in general in any capacity. And that's where we start off with. I mean, I can tell you as a realtor, I'm constantly fighting with, you know, the stereotypes or breaking through those perceptions. And so I start off with that, you know, level, that playing field, and that makes it an unlevel playing field. I mean, we're starting off at a disadvantage as it is, unlike our white colleagues. So I take it all the way up to that level. You know, several people on this panel and people who are probably listening who know me, they know that I've been working on my doctorate for the last 4 years. I'm hoping to finish in June. But right now in my dissertation, just looking at my lit review, I'm really uncovering exactly how inimical the stereotypes have been to our success and our ability to move forward as a people in this country. So I take it all the way up to that level. It's like, we got to get through the stereotypes.
Well said. Thanks. All right, let's move on to the next question. So this one centers around generational wealth. So most people have heard, whether by hearing a conversation or actively participating in a conversation about generational wealth. What are some goals and useful tools that you could share with our audience to begin the process of building that generational wealth? We're gonna go with Tony.
All right, start with me. So one of our mantras and one of our guiding principles for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers is building generational wealth through home ownership. So research shows that we have been disenfranchised from the ability to really participate in the #1 wealth building capacity in this country for any group, and that is home ownership. And being able to tap into the equity of owning a home, to send our kids to college, to live in better neighborhoods, to send our kids to private school, to not burden our people, our kids with student loan debt. I mean, right now, the Supreme Court is champion, or they're reviewing this, the Biden administration's, debt relief for student loans, right? Well, what gets lost in that message is that us as African Americans, we are the ones who are typically, more disenfranchised by that burdensome debt of student loans, because we can't tap into our homes. Our parents can't tap into their homes to send us to college. So it starts off, back there. It's like generational wealth has all test scores. Test scores have shown, like, for homeowners, their kids test higher than kids who are parents of renters. So it goes all the way back there. So generational wealth building, democracy through housing, that is our major tenet as the National Association of Real Estate Brokers and Oregon Realtors, which is the local board. As an African American, I can tell you, growing up in Detroit, I was very fortunate. My parents owned a home, my grandparents owned a home, but no one else in our extended family, and I have a very large family back in Detroit, and they're still back in Detroit, no one else owned homes. It just wasn't something that was a cultural reality that, people didn't discuss it. The families didn't encourage kids to buy homes. They didn't encourage one another to buy homes. I had an aunt who I didn't even realize that she didn't own a home until she passed away, but she had been renting this home for 48 years. So she paid for this home for 2 generations. And that's normal, though. That is normal, and that's, through lack of education, not understanding the benefits of home ownership and how it leads to generational wealth building. So, I take this very personally when it comes down to for that question in generational wealth building, especially as somebody in the real estate industry.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Obviously, we would expect the real estate person to mention real estate, but I also agree. Since I've owned a home, being able to rent it out, just adds to your generational wealth that you can pass down.
Pass it on to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. In fact, like when it's interesting because when my family members, when they pass away, I didn't grow up with the expectation that, hey, I'm going to get money from my grandparents, when they pass away, or I'm going to get money from my parents when they pass away. That is an expectation for people with a different skin tone than us. It totally is an expectation. Certainly wasn't for us in Detroit. So that's a perfect example, though, of the power of generational wealth building through real estate.
All right, Adesina.
Yeah, so I am also in the Oregon Realtors because generational wealth is very near and dear to my heart. I mentioned in the beginning that my mom was white, and the reason that I mentioned that is because she grew up with that, right? She grew up with these ideas of home ownership and that type of stuff. But when she married my father in the 70s and left all of that behind and came out to San Francisco, we lost a lot of that. What I know now is that she was still working that script of generational wealth in the background, but I didn't understand what was going on. And so I'd never heard the word generational wealth. I did not know that houses appreciated. I didn't understand why you would want to be a landlord or what that meant. And so I grew up in what I call a renter's mentality. And so for me, the very first step, because you talked about some tools and some tips, the very first step is the understanding of how we got where we are, acknowledging it, understanding that if you have a low credit score, if you have debt, whatever you've got, you leveraged what you had available to you to get to where you are right now. And then putting your next foot forward on what I call the roadmap to home ownership with a mindset that you can create that. So I always say, if you didn't come from a family of wealth, let's make sure a family of wealth comes from you, right? Because that is where the generational piece comes into it. Sometimes, even if you don't think you make a huge step for yourself, I guarantee you that is making huge steps for future generations. So with that knowledge that my mom had in the back of her head, she was squirreling away money, right? So when I didn't have the things that I wanted, it wasn't actually that we didn't have the money, it's that she was looking for home ownership because she knew how important that was gonna be. But unlike buying a home when she was 20 or 30, as she grew up expecting, she didn't buy her first home until until I was in high school. And she bought that through the assistance of a program for teachers. And she bought that house for somewhere around $150,000. She was in San Francisco, and when she sold it, that created the beginning of several generations of wealth for us that I didn't know was playing in the background. And so I was able to take that. She helped me get into my first home. And then I very shortly went into this business. And when I went with my first mortgage broker, when I bought my house, I said, I'm just going to pay this off as soon as possible and have no debt. And he said, what if you didn't do that? What if you took that extra money and started buying something? And he just, my mind blew up. He blew my mind up and said words like appreciation, generational wealth. And that just opened a floodgate to understanding all of this stuff that my mom sort of knew. Somehow I hadn't gotten the message. Most people I know did not have the message. And how truly vital, as you said, the number one way to build wealth in this country is through property ownership. If that's the beginning of just not paying somebody else's mortgage, like the person who rented for 48 years, all the way down to, my absolute plan for my daughter is to purchase her a duplex when she is 18, right? So that's one tip, right? I'm starting to think about this, houses not college kind of thing. I know it's radical, but I believe in it because I see what student loan does to people. And if the whole point was to go to college, get a good job, get a house and be happy with your family, and then you finally go to get the house and your student loans are preventing you from buying that house, then starting with home ownership very young, particularly if you can get into a duplex, is one tip. And the other tip is you don't need to have money to have a financial advisor and to be financially literate and to have things, everybody remember that Gerber life insurance that they used to advertise on TV? And I thought, oh, that's just another way to take money. The whole life insurance for your children is an amazing, pretty affordable thing that you can do because that is one of the way people of means start businesses. They pull money out of their whole life. And to what you were saying about equity, the way I was able to start my first business was I couldn't afford childcare. Turned out I was sitting on some equity because it was in the time when so I refinanced my house and used that money to get daycare for my child so that I could actually get some work done and go out and start marketing a business. So you are absolutely right, Tony, that generational wealth begins with the first generation often making some sacrifices. I now understand the sacrifices that my mother made so that when I was 40, she could help me buy a house. And it is absolutely my intention to pass that on to my daughter and any other people that I can help along the way, either directly in my family or more importantly, through talking with people about this mindset of wherever you have been, we get it. But where are you going to go now? And what do you have to do to get there? So for me, the mindset is the first tool.
So real quick, so some people may not, so the buying a duplex for your daughter might be counterintuitive to some people. Could you explain your thought process around that?
So typically, if you want to buy an investment property, you need a much larger down payment, around 20%. But FHA has a program where you can buy a duplex with only 3.5% down. And typically, the rent on that other side will pay all or most of the mortgage on your side. So now with, what is a duplex these days, Tony? Right. So there's, well, that's a great point though, because there is sacrifice involved in generational wealth. So you're going to go to Gresham, you're going to get a duplex. Let's say, it's $450,000, but to get in with that, with only 3.5% of that, so somebody else is now paying your mortgage instead of you paying somebody else's mortgage. And to do that for a young person, that is the beginning of right there. And what I want for my daughter, the wealth that I want to give her is the ability to go out and serve the world, not to have to take the job that gives her health insurance because she has health problems. That's what I want for her. That's the other wealth I want to give her, is the financial ease of serving the world instead of, working in some of the jobs that I had to work just to make ends meet.
Perfect example of what we call leverage.
Yep.
It's like using somebody else to pay your mortgage. My son bought his first place and bought a condo in Lake Oswego 2 years ago. Got a roommate, and his roommate is paying enough in rent that, it's more than half of his mortgage. So it's like, that's leverage. So we as a people aren't necessarily educated on the power of leverage in that perspective. And that's what we really need to do. So, the biggest tip for me is it's education, it's awareness. Yeah. Sorry, Randall, I didn't mean to take two turns.
All right, the person that's not in real estate. Let's go. Lance.
When you look at the word generational wealth, there's a root word which is to generate. So we should say, how do we generate wealth? How do we make money? And we've done it before. We've always done it to the point where when we did it down in Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma, we was making so much money they couldn't stand it. Same happened down in Rosewood. So we know how to generate wealth. So when I hear this question of goals and tools, we have goals and tools, but what is the starting point to generate wealth? Well, I'm 57, so I think I may have passed my prime to start generating wealth. But we have young entrepreneurs who are now stepping up and starting businesses. So this is what should be our starting point going forward, is that young entrepreneurs who are starting businesses, we need to stop putting all of our money into our 401k and 401b because it's an investment that you expect a return. If we expect a return on investment of our young people, we have to invest into what they're trying to do with their businesses. So what I would suggest that if you're putting a certain amount of money in your 401k every month, scale back a little bit of that money and invest some of that into a young Black entrepreneur that's trying to start business. Because the only way that we can begin to generate wealth, we have to have a starting point. And unfortunately, we were not allowed to start the same as everyone else, as Tony mentioned. But we can help. Now that we're in a different situation, in a different way of life, we have more opportunities than we ever had before. Now we can invest ourselves into our own young people as they build these businesses. What will happen is right before our eyes, we will see a young person building a business using our resources. And we can even write out some paperwork to say at a certain point of time, I need a return on my money back that I'm investing into you every month. So we can see them building the business. The other thing is that we can help them and support them in building their business and keep them encouraged as they continue to move forward, because they're going to run into some barriers. And what better person to help them get through those barriers than us that are investing in them and we look like them. See, we need to get more investments coming from people that look like us into our youth. And in doing that, there are certain things that we can say if they go sideways that others can't say to our youth. Don't play with my money. All right? Don't play with my money. I'm helping you. Don't play with it. That's another thing, because when we invested in our youth, they stand these businesses like we've done before. Then they have generational wealth that they can pass down to their children. Or if you have colleagues, if we do vertical integration of businesses, they may have colleagues that will buy your business and keep it going. So generational wealth is just not just in the family, but it's part of the community. Generational wealth for the community, which means that if my son doesn't want to buy the business, maybe my friend's son will buy the business, and we still maintain that generational wealth as a community. So when I think about the first step we have to take is look forward now. We have opportunity, and let's invest into our new entrepreneurs in what they're trying to do and push them forward so they can begin the new generational wealth movement. And I see it every day happening. I'm excited about it. We have someone here today who's a great example in Jelana and what she's doing. And she talks about her mother, her grandmother, and they invested in her and gave her the skills and taught her how to bake. And now she's an entrepreneur that's going forward. We need to go by there and shop. And every now and then, like they do, just slip a little money in her pocket to invest into her business so she can keep it going. That is how we create generational wealth for ourselves.
Do you know a young Black entrepreneur who is starting in some sort of app platform
Yes,
that we
I
could
do.
perhaps use to invest in our Black youth and create this wealth?
Yes, I do. If I can give you the young brother that did our website, which is a nice website. He can create apps, and he's always looking for people to invest in his company.
Yeah, that'd be interesting, just because that's one of the problems with investing in the local economy in general is they've taken away the knowledge from us and the ability to know how to do that. So if we have a platform that we can showcase people and say, this person, kind of like I heard there's a Black Twitter, I don't own Twitter, but maybe we need a Black Kickstarter.
Well, when it comes to knowledge, everything we've learned, we pretty much learned ourselves. And even today, there's still things that we're not told, but we have the ability to figure out. As I said, we're game changers. Once we figure out the game and learn the rules, we excel. And I encourage my brothers and sisters to build the mindset, enhance your mindset that you are capable of figuring out whatever they are not telling us, whoever that is. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, whatever we don't know, nobody exactly has to tell us. We can find out. We have that ability. We've been doing it ever since we've been here. So I'm just saying, let's do what we already know how to do and not get distracted by negative information, racist comments, stereotypes. Black history, we talk about it, tells you who you are and what you can do and what you're going to do. Start there, generational wealth, learn on your own and watch what's going to happen. We've done it before, we can do it again.
Yeah, Lance brings up a really good point though, as far as the, research shows that the lack of similar others that serve as role models can be, detrimental, or it can be inimical to, your growth. And we need to, as a people, ensure that we step into those roles, that we can serve as those role models, that we don't have a lack of similar others that they look up to and say, like, well, how do I do this? So you're talking about the information. It's like, well, we can get the information, we can research the information, but we shouldn't have to do that. We should be passing on the information, and we should be helping people find that information, people who look like us in our community.
Well, you guys really just led into the next question, but is there anything you want to add? So the next question was, why would it be difficult to maintain generational wealth as a Black person? But I'll just open it up to any of you. Anything you'd like to add that you haven't already said?
Mine is going to be really quick. First, you got to understand the mechanisms for creating generational wealth. And then one of the areas is definitely retention. So yes, once for me, of course, I'm going to champion buying property, buying a home. But at the same time, and Lance mentioned this, getting a financial advisor. Somebody who is, or I think Adesina said this, getting a financial advisor, you don't have to be wealthy to get a financial advisor. That comes into the aspect of wealth retention. So getting the wealth is one area, but one of the things that I think we fail to do or concentrate on is retention of that wealth.
So to clarify, so part of the reason it's difficult is we don't have the ability to maintain it or to retain it. We don't have that financial advisor, things like that.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
And that's not just that somehow Black folks don't have the knowledge to do it on their own. That is advice that goes for everybody. Because that's complicated, right? And we all have our own jobs and our families and stuff like that, and so that changes. I think one of the other great barriers and is that, let me back up a little bit here. So I was working in a particular company, doing some mortgage education for them. And what I began to see was that across the same level of employees, all at the same salary, right? All hired in there, the people of color there had lower credit scores, more debt. They were supporting more people in general. They were often the first in their family to go to college and get degrees that landed them at this place. So that place had been successful in creating the diversity, but we are now working with them on the equity inclusion piece in actual real estate equity, because those people needed more help. But one of the ways that you can lose that wealth is that if you have more people that have less resources in your family, it is more likely that somebody is going to get in trouble, or that you're going to get in trouble. Or if you don't have the same amount of savings, it becomes easier when you're walking that fine line and you've stretched a little bit to get into a house. It can be easier if you don't have the right backup, and a lot of us don't have as much backup as a lot of white people traditionally do. So that's one way, is just being stretched thinner can make it harder.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's difficult to maintain generational wealth for us. I think we just have to make a slight shift. We have to shift our mindset from being consumers, more consumers, and be more producers. And what I mean by that, we're notorious in going out and buying stuff, but we're buying it from someone else that either produced it themselves or someone produced it for them. It feels better to me when I'm able to go and spend my money that I generated myself, rather than spending money that I had to get from working on somebody else's. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think if we just make that shift, say, you know what, rather than me spending money on this or that, or all of my money on this and that, let me take a little some aside and put me a little nest egg so I can come up with something that I can produce, whether it's a service or product, that I can maintain my wealth, which means that less spending, more savings, and investing into something that's going to give you a return. And if we shift that mindset, then it'll make a difference. The other thing too about maintaining generational wealth, and I talked about it not only for your family, but for your community. I was talking to my communications director today, and I was telling her that whenever we start businesses, we should always keep in mind, what other businesses can I help start that I can support and they can support me? That vertical integration piece, which means that, Jelana, if I need flour, somebody should be able to provide me flour that's black. And in exchange, I can turn around and sell them the cake that they helped me make. You see my point? Which means that the money stayed right there and you didn't buy it from somebody else. You produced it yourself and you sold to one another what you needed to make it happen, and the money stays in place. So the mindset of producing more, and when I'm starting a business, I need to get with my buddies, my friends, and say, I'm starting this business, and one of the components I need is someone that can provide this. Why don't you start a business for that? And go from there. Now you have a network that can help you build generational wealth personally, but also a network that can help the community build generational wealth because of the vertical integration of businesses.
I like it.
Another thought that I have not too. Unfortunately, one of the greatest risks to losing of generational wealth is the healthcare system and the health of people right now. So this is also actually a huge issue that my experience itself experienced, right? So I had an aunt who, she was born, in the Depression, and she wasn't wealthy by any means, but she lived in San Francisco, and somebody gave her a little AT&T stock, and she did well. And at about 85, things were all hunky-dory, and then she got dementia, and then an awful lot of money was spent caring for her until she lived. She died a couple days after her 100th birthday. And so there are also families, and this is across the board, black, white, everybody. We are at a time where we are losing a whole generation of wealth due to the cost of healthcare and caring for elderly parents. And you have women like myself in their 40s who have an elderly parent and a child to be cared for, but we're all working more, which means we're spending more of our wealth on therapy and healthcare services and food delivery services. So that's a real concern for me of the generation of women that I'm in, is this sandwich between parents that need care, children that need care, and just so much stress that rather than tuck that money away for reserves, we are using it on services just to keep our heads above water. That's something I actually see coming down the pipeline, is there are people that are gonna lose all of that generational wealth, because it is going to long-term care.
Studies actually do show the #1 cause of bankruptcy is healthcare.
Absolutely. Happened to me.
That's a great point, and that's something that not a lot of people think about. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. All right, so last question. So what do you believe are the barriers to the growth and development of Black businesses? We'll start with Lance.
Well, I would say the main barrier is the refusal of our U.S. policymakers to finally make changes in the rules when it comes to our economy. There's still some things that are being done that have been done way back that have been designed to keep us from having the ability to get what we need financially to be full participants in the economy. And I think every year we need to continue to lobby our elected officials to make changes in the financial system and the way the rules of the economy work, because they were not designed to help us. If they were not designed to help us then, they're not designed to help us now. We need to make sure that we take a look at these rules and make adjustments so they can work for everybody. Because when they put them in place, we were excluded. But now we're included, now they need to be adjusted. The other thing is the lack of resources, being able to get what we need from the banks, the lenders. I would say that banks are really not racist, but some of the people in there are. And what we have to do is we have to make sure we expose them and root them out so that we can get people in the bank who will be creative and work with us and clearly try to understand our business plans and take a chance on us as far as giving us the resources we need to start and have businesses. And the only way to do this is, as I said earlier, we're game changers. We need to learn more about the banking system because they are constantly changing rules and all these different things that happen, these big mergers, rule changes. So we need to really begin to educate ourselves and one another on the banking system, how it works and how we can make it work for us. But I think the biggest barrier is the national policy that was created way back, and there has not been the type of changes that need to be made. And that's the biggest fight. When you're talking about our U.S. government, the biggest fight is changing those rules. And until that happens, it's going to continue to be difficult, but that's okay. We've come through the roughest of times before. We'll continue to get through the rough times, and we will survive, and we will have our businesses, we will do well. Because remember, we are resilient, strong people who have overcome a lot during our lifetime, and we will continue to do so. And I think people are amazed at that too. They can't figure it out. They can't figure it out. Like they can't figure out how they built the pyramids, but I think we know. We know. But anyway, that's what I think needs to happen, first and foremost.
All right. Tony?
I would agree with Lance. I think what he's referring to is you have de facto and de jure legislative policies that have been in place for a very long time. So when I say like de facto, we just assume that, okay, well, we have not been able to participate in some of these business opportunities or wealth generation opportunities because of just racist people. And then you have the de jure, which is actual policies, state-sanctioned, federal-sanctioned policies. And that's one of the things that in the real estate side that has kept our people from owning homes for multiple generations, is that we had a combination of the two. They never recognized the de jure aspect. We always assumed it was de facto, but now research has come out and shown that, well, no, we actually had legislative policies that forbid lenders from giving us money, from keeping us from living in certain areas. You've heard of redlining. These were actual federal policies. And I'm not here to like get on the history piece and woe is me. Like Lance said, we will overcome, and we do overcome, but I think to overcome, it's literally a matter of education and awareness. I think one of the biggest hindrances for us is, and this is probably not gonna be a popular opinion, I think it's a lack of belief that we can do it. And that goes back to, again, research show not having those role models, not having those similar others, not having those people who are paying it forward from us as a people, paying it forward and serving as those role models. We're not educating a generation of people about their possibilities, about their ability, about their potential. So yeah, probably not a popular opinion, but I think we can be our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that needs to change.
Yeah, well
And that's
said.
why we need to read Black history.
That's why we need Black History Month,
So
right?
so that
Yeah.
we will understand that we are more positive than people give us credit for.
Absolutely.
And Tony, I'm actually going to agree with you, because that was absolutely my problem. I did not believe that I could. I was so fooled as to not believe that it was even be a benefit. Because I thought that I couldn't, I acted like I didn't want it, right? Why would I want that? I don't want to be part of the man's system, right? But it's because I believed that I couldn't. I believed that it was beyond my ability, and I'm a smart girl. I went to college, I had good jobs and stuff, but I still thought, but not that. So I agree with you that the mindset is a huge part of it. I would also urge anybody who is about to start a business, please speak to your mortgage person or me first before you disqualify yourself from buying a house when you start your business. But I would say actually, so one of the big barriers I think is just time poverty. Because it is actually hard to start your own business. There's no medical benefits, right? So it's not nothing to start your own business. So one of the barriers is, do you have a supportive partner? Do you have another income in your family? Do you have help somewhere from maybe getting funds from refinancing your house? I think the support structure, both through mentorship, but just physically, who takes care of your kids when you're taking work calls all day and all night? When you were the sole supporter and a business owner. So I think that's a big barrier for people that we have to learn how to help people through better, is what is the right time? What are the resources? The knowledge that you can do it, but it's actually, for a lot of us, I'm just speak from my own experience, this has been hard, but
Whoa.
Okay, so I guess we're done, guys.
I think it's motion activated.
Yeah, so I think that's a barrier, because I think they can still hear us, is that it's a lot. There's a lot to be done just to figure out, like, wait, I still don't know if I need a business license in Beaverton and Portland or in what counties. I have a state license, but I'm not so sure about the rest of that. So I think that's a barrier, is just the complication, because most people like me lived in a simple W-2. You go here, you do your thing, you go home, somebody else takes care of the rest.
All right, thanks a lot for our panelists. We're going to open it up to questions from both the Zoom audience as well as the in-person live audience. So if you're on Zoom, go ahead and raise your hand if you want to ask a question. If you're in the room, just go ahead and raise your hand physically. I'm going to open up with the first question. So you guys start gathering your questions, but I have a question. So what would you guys say is some maybe out-of-the-box ways that Black business owners or people that are trying to start a business can finance that business?
Oh, those are finance questions. Send these down here.
Well, so I'm a residential lender. So in my world, that is tapping into home equity to do that. That's really the only option that I personally can offer. But if you're starting a product business, there are Kickstarters. I just looked at another thing the other day that it seemed really interesting to me, except I don't have a product that can help fund. So I think you've got your home equity, but then there's also the Washington Chamber is happy to help you with resources. There's MISO with resources. So there's something called SBA loans that small businesses can get. I don't have one, so I don't know a lot about it, but either home equity or go to an organization like MISO or the Washington Chamber and ask for guidance and help in where to start with a business plan, get coaching on how to make your business plan, and then go get some money.
Yep. So yeah. So home equity, SBA, MISO, and then also you didn't mention, but 401k. I think you kind of mentioned that, Lance, earlier.
Yeah.
You can use a lot of people don't know you can use your 401k, part of your 401k to fund a business as well. So, all right. Anyone else? Anyone have a question? Let's see. Anyone on Zoom? Anyone
I
in
have
the room?
a question. Can you hear me?
All right. Go ahead.
Oh, wait, yeah, somebody on Zoom.
Yes, this is
talking.
Latasha.
All right, we'll go with Jelana first.
Wait, hold on a second.
Oh.
Well, no, I was gonna say they were talking at the same time.
Oh,
On.
Okay, right, okay. This is Latasha. I was just thinking, like, sometimes people, Black people, they need information, but they use the lack of seeing someone that looks like them as an excuse for not getting the information. So how would you guys
Ask her to
encourage
repeat it 'cause she
people?
had the volume down.
Yeah.
Can she repeat it again because you had the volume down? One more time, Natasha. We got the volume now.
Okay, yes. I was saying that sometimes, we as Black people, we look for someone that looks like us to get information from, but sometimes that may not be an option. And some people may use that as an excuse as to, not getting the information because they don't have anyone that looks like them. How would you encourage them to seek the information first, regardless of if someone looks like them or not? Because sometimes somebody has to be the first, correct?
That's a good question, Natasha. Let me tell you what we got to do. We got to come out of our neighborhoods and go places that we think that we shouldn't go. We should go anyway, which means that we cannot get rich just on Black folks the same way white folks didn't just get rich on just white folks. There was a combination of people that have to help people get rich, and there has to be a connection in all different sectors. I always tell people this as well. I say, when you look at the 64 and 65 voters legislation, the voters' rights legislation, and civil rights legislation, the majority of people in Congress were white. So I tell them that there are some good white people that really want to help you, but you got to come out your neighborhood and go to them and tell them exactly what kind of help you need and then work with them. We can't lead off with a story of our oppression. We have to lead off with our desire to take something forward in the future. And that is the way that we build that relationship where they know, okay, you really want to do something. And you came to me in such a way where you want me to help you. And that's how you got to just come out of it and go see people that don't look like us and ask them for their help, but we have a tendency to stay in our community. So I would encourage people to go and talk to all different kinds of people in different ethnic backgrounds and basically say, look, I want you to do business with me, not because I'm Black, but because I have a value proposition. I can help you with your price. I can give you a better price on something. I can give you better service. I can help you get what you need, but I need you to help me get what I need so that we can partner. So it's just a matter of having the conversation, building those relationships, and going out and broaden your horizons as far as your audience and your potential customer base. That's the key to do it.
It looks like we got a
Thank
couple
you.
more
That was good.
questions.
Thank you.
Oh, all right, let's go with Jelana first, then we'll go to Christy. So go ahead, Jelana. Oh, apparently there's a mic that so people can hear you on Zoom.
Can I speak up? Oh.
All right, so go ahead, Jelana.
What point is a good place when you do have the home that a family member has left you? My mom worked really hard to create generational wealth. When should the opportunity start looking where I can sell that home to invest in either a larger home or property to build on and then create rental property and take that home to the next level?
Now,
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't wait, like I like to say, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. So
exactly.
the other thing about the knowledge is that even though in our business, Tony and I both get paid at the end by commission, and I actually think that's one of the things in the lending industry that is the holdout of people not getting served is the way that we get paid. But we're always willing to talk and educate. So it's never too early to make a connection in real estate to say, I want to do this someday. What is the roadmap to get there? Yeah, it's always better to have the information. We always want you to be the ones to say no or it's not time. We never want you to wait until you're ready and then come to us and say, you missed these 5 steps or now's not the right time. We always want you on the path to thinking about what your next step is going to be.
Yeah, and I would say when you talk to a professional in real estate, they're going to give you a much better idea of what the market is, what the market is doing. They can tell you about the history of the market. They can give you some information about where they think the market is going. So I think the timing when I say now, it's always now, because you need to be a few steps ahead so you can do the planning aspect. So let's say, last June when interest rates doubled, maybe that wasn't the time to do it, but today it is. So you have to get that information. You got to get that knowledge. I think the same thing when you're looking at, that should be one aspect of financial planning. You need to be talking to a financial planner. I think you should be talking to a CPA who actually does estate planning or tax planning versus just filling out your taxes at the very end and telling you how much you owe. You want to talk to a professional so they can decide, hey, this is how we're going to structure your taxes over the next 5 years. So all of that is a package, and I think the timing for thinking about that is right now.
And there's teams too, right? Like not official teams, like Tony has an official team in his business, but we all know people, right? So if it sounds overwhelming, oh wait, I need this and this and this to be successful, you just got to make one connection, and then that person usually has a little bit of knowledge and anything, but they pass you to the right hand, and we all work together when we're advocating for somebody to help them build this roadmap to generational wealth.
Thank you.
And I think we can do a better job of working together. So.
All right, next we're going to go to, on Zoom, Christy Dodge.
Hello. Thank you for this. This has been a great presentation. I really value all of your input. So besides frequenting businesses like Jelana, which I have, how can those of us who really want to, pour our efforts and help support Black-owned businesses?
I would say get involved with advocacy, get involved with advocacy organizations. I mean, like right here, we're at the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. This is an organization that can advocate for businesses. Join, affinity groups that concentrate on advocating on behalf of the historically disenfranchised. I would say, tapping into the power of allies. Like, Lance actually said, we can't do this by ourselves. Especially here in Oregon, where our population is 3%. It's just not gonna happen. So, but we have a lot of allies who support us and support our cause, and I think we need to tap into them. We need to lean into them. We need to ask for their assistance. And so those who are, again, if you are a white individual, don't be afraid to help us out and join our organization and join our cause. I won't blow you up on social media and say it was cultural appropriation because you joined NARAB. I promise you. So.
Yeah. And I would
you.
say also, people often think about the bakery or the coffee shop or something like that, but do also get out your phone book and look at the services, your CPA, your mortgage person, your insurance person, right? Some of those professional services as well. And the other thing is, part of the way that not just Black folks, a lot of people are kept down is the shame about talking about money, the shame about talking about what you have. So if you're an ally and you know somebody that doesn't have a home, talk to them about the benefits of what it's brought into your life and encourage everybody else to also seek that benefit for themselves. Because those that don't own homes, a lot of them don't know anything about it. They don't know what it costs to get one. I've talked to people that are like, well, I don't have $600,000 to buy a house. Well, that's not how it works. So also share the successes that you have with the people around you and encourage them as well.
Thank you.
I would say referrals and recommendations.
Absolutely.
Refer businesses that are Black owned to your friends, family, co-workers, and also recommend them to your friends, family, and co-workers. And also if there's an opportunity, and I just talked about it earlier, because I know white folks got 401ks too. Don't be afraid to take some of your money out of your 401k and be committed to invest into the future of Black entrepreneurs as they try to grow their businesses. Like we said, everybody can take part in this. Everybody can take part in it. One thing that we're pushing to do is we're asking every major corporation in the state to give us a list of products and services that you're buying outside of the state of Oregon. And we would take that list and try to create a Black entrepreneur that would give you the better price and the better service, and they're local. Just give us that opportunity and we'll bring them about. Now, if we can't find them, then we're going to do what we call Black business recruiting. Let's resolve. We don't have everything we need here. There's only 38,000 of us in Portland and about 78,000 in the state. So we don't have everything that we need here. So we have to stretch our network out to Charlotte, to Atlanta, to Detroit, and places that say, look, we don't have a Black hardware store in the state of Oregon. You have one. So why don't you consider coming out here and set up one so that we can have a Black hardware store. And when that happens, make sure you cater that store and make them feel welcome, and they should be feeling like they're a part of the broader economy. So there's many things you can do, but I would say the main thing is you just have to do it.
I
All
do
right,
have
well
a
said.
question on chat, if you'd like me to ask it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, any new down payment assistance programs for middle income individuals? Many programs have very strict limiting guidelines that leave little room for underwriters to work with.
I'm assuming that this question is directed towards me. This is an excellent question, because in a metro area where houses cost more than $250,000, most of these programs are not working out, because they are, if you make little enough money to qualify, you don't make enough money to qualify for the mortgage. So there are some programs. One of the things we do at Ventura Home Loans is, if we can't help, we know some people that we can connect you to. Some banks, during COVID, almost everything went away, so it's been hard. But we know some people. There's Washington Bond. Some people still have Chenoa. But as of actually got into practice that I can serve you with, new programs, no, I don't know of any brand new ones. And you're absolutely right. It is pretty hard to qualify for the program, but also qualify for the down payment. So that is one of the higher level things that needs to be worked on, is the institutions, some are federal, some of them individual banks have them, those guidelines for who those programs serve and what's realistic. Because I can tell you, if you're two people making $80,000 a year, that is not a lot of money when you were trying to buy a house around here. So unfortunately, the answer is, I don't know of any right now, but write somebody a letter.
All right, thanks. Let's go with Latasha online.
Yes. So Lance, you said something about better pricing. We'll find someone that has better pricing. And to me, that sounds like lower pricing. And I feel like sometimes we think, in the Black community, that the only way that someone will accept me or what I do is by lowering my price in order to compete. And so I just wanted to get, I guess, a clarification when, what do you mean by better pricing?
Well, pricing is part of the competitive process. Everybody wants a deal. And the key is that once you get one deal and you perform well, you're more likely to get another one and another one and another one. So in many cases, and we just have to accept this reality as Black people, sometimes we're going to have to sacrifice just a little bit so that we can prove that we can do it. I've had to do that, and I'm a business owner. I had to come in with a price that I knew was too low in my business, but when I showed up and showed out, they said, you charge us too little. We got to hook you up. It just happened this weekend. So now, and then what they said from there? They said, from now on, we're going to call you for our business. So what I'm saying is, you're going to have to figure out a value proposition. It could be in your price. It could be in your service. But once you are able to display that value proposition to a customer, then you have an opportunity to keep that customer, and then you can build on other customers. There's always got to be a starting point. So it's not minimizing your value. It's not minimizing your product. It's just part of doing business, in that you have to find out what's important to this customer for me to get their business. If it's pricing, and you can sacrifice a little to get the business the first time, yes, but then the next time, they may be willing to give you more because you did a good job. When it comes to the service, it's the same thing. So that's the clarification. It's just a way of getting the opportunity. And when you look at RFPs and bidding process, it's about the lowest bid, but sometimes the lowest bid is not the best bid because they don't perform. But when I look at the lowest bid as an opportunity to get in and show what I can do, so next time I have a reason to bring my price up because I did more than what you expected. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying to diminish anything. I'm saying get in the door. You want the opportunity to show them what you can do. And that's one way to do it.
I think it's looking at the pricing aspect as just one arrow in your quiver. Yeah. But what Lance said is correct. It's all about that value proposition. In my industry, it's a little different. The pricing is not, it would be in form of the commission or the rate that I charge. And I can tell you, when I started off in this business 20 years ago, I did not lead with pricing. I did not say, okay, I'm competing with the lowest commission. I competed with the best value proposition, which was going to be incredible customer service that they had never experienced before. And that's what I built my business on over the last 20 years. And so it's great because I've been able to maintain my pricing, to a certain extent. I mean, the market has certainly dictated things in the last 20 years. It's a little different, but I will say I've been able to retain much more of it than my competitors of any other racial group. So it's, because I built it based on customer service. So that was just one aspect of the value proposition that I was developing. But I think it goes back to, it's just one arrow in your quiver. So.
Thanks. Yeah, that's well said. Any other questions in the room? Any other questions on Zoom?
I got a question. When does happy hour start? They've been teasing us here with this wine in the background. We're just looking at it, but
6:11. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I would love to thank our panel. They did an excellent job.
Well, this was a lot of fun. I thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks
Enjoy
for you
it.
all for joining us on Zoom. I see a couple names I know. Thanks.
Yeah. And please go to the website of the Black Business Association of Oregon. It's a great website, and I want you to see all we're going to be doing to try to bring prosperity and generational wealth to Black Oregonians.
Lance, are we
Is there a
going
way-
to get a statewide directory of Black businesses?
Yes, we are. I'm glad you said that. Yes, we are.
And is there a way we could send that website out to
Yes.
like everyone that was, part of this meeting? Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah.
We're working on that. We got legislation on the floor on that. Is that it?
All
No,
right.
no comments? All
No
right.
comment?
I think we're adjourned.
All right.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.